The night was filled with noise, echoing inside the giant alien arena. Strange lights moved like snakes across the metal walls, and thousands of voices rose in excitement. They were waiting for blood. They were waiting for entertainment. In the center of the arena, guards dragged a small figure. It was a girl, an alien girl. Her body was thin, her skin bruised, and her steps weak. She did not fight. She did not shout. She only stumbled forward with her head down. The chains on her wrists made a sharp sound with every step. The crowd laughed. Some shouted cruel words. "Broken!" they called her. "She cannot even stand." Others threw pieces of food at her like she was not even alive, only a toy. On the other side of the arena stood a man, a human. His name was Daniel. He had been captured months ago, forced to fight for alien amusement. They made humans fight against each other, sometimes against beasts, sometimes against machines. Tonight, they had decided to give him something different. They gave him a broken alien girl. The announcer's voice echoed across the arena. "Behold, the human challenger will now be given his prize, a broken toy for his entertainment. Let us see what he does with her." The crowd roared again, expecting Daniel to laugh, to push the girl, maybe even destroy her. They wanted to see cruelty. They wanted to see weakness crushed. Daniel did not move at first. He only looked at her carefully. Her shoulders shook as if she expected pain. She did not even dare to raise her head to see who stood in front of her. Something heavy filled Daniel's chest. He had seen many broken things since coming here, but this girl was not broken by nature. She was broken by hands, by choice, by cruelty. Someone had taken away her strength, her dignity, her will to live. A cup of water was placed near Daniel. Usually it was for the fighter to prepare before the match. But Daniel picked it up and slowly walked toward the girl. The crowd fell silent for a moment, surprised. Then whispers spread like fire. Daniel bent down on one knee in front of her. The girl flinched, expecting him to strike. Instead, he lifted the cup. His voice was low, calm, and gentle. "Drink," he said. For a moment, the girl did not move. Her lips trembled, her eyes still hidden under messy hair. Slowly, as if she could not believe it, she lifted her head a little. Her eyes were bright, but full of fear. Daniel moved the cup closer. "It's okay," he whispered. "Drink." The girl's hands shook as she touched the cup. She drank only a little, as if afraid even water could be taken away. Daniel let her drink as much as she wanted. The crowd exploded with anger. "Boo!" they shouted. "This is not a show. This is weakness." Some demanded punishment. Some wanted guards to step in. The announcer shouted for Daniel to make her fight or make her bleed. But Daniel stood between her and the crowd. His eyes turned cold, sharp as steel. He did not care for their anger. He knew now what he had to do. This was lie. This was no entertainment. The girl was not a toy. She was someone who had been broken again and again. And if no one else would help her, then he would, even if it cost him his life. The guards began to move forward, ready to punish him. The crowd demanded action. The girl trembled, whispering in a weak voice only Daniel could hear. "Why? Why are you helping me?" Daniel clenched his fists. His answer was simple, but his voice carried the weight of iron. "Because you are alive, and that is reason enough." The arena filled with chaos, but Daniel did not move away. For the first time, the crowd saw something they never expected. Not cruelty, not entertainment, but defiance. And from that moment, the story of the broken girl and the human who risked everything for her had truly begun. The arena was still boiling with chaos after Daniel gave water to the broken alien girl. Guards shouted, the announcer demanded order, and the crowd screamed for blood. But Daniel stood calm, his body blocking her from their eyes. That night, after the crowd was forced to leave, Daniel was taken back to his cell. The girl was thrown into the same dark chamber with him. She fell on the cold floor, her thin arms shaking. Daniel helped her sit against the wall, but she did not speak. The silence was heavy. Only the sound of dripping water echoed through the stone walls. Daniel finally asked, "Wait, what's your name?" The girl lowered her head. "No name," she whispered. Her voice was weak, almost broken like her body. Daniel frowned. "Everyone has a name. They took mine," she said. Her eyes stared at the ground, empty. "I am only broken." The words stabbed Daniel's heart. To her, it was not just what people called her. It was what she believed she was, broken, worthless, something less than alive. Daniel could not accept that. "You are not broken," he said firmly. But the girl only closed her eyes, refusing to believe. Suddenly the heavy door opened. 2 alien guards entered, their armor shining under the torchlight. One of them pointed at Daniel. "Human, tomorrow you fight. If you win, you live. If you lose, you die." The other guard smirked at the girl. "And she will watch. If she moves, we break her for real." The door slammed shut again. Darkness returned. The girl hugged her knees, whispering, "You should not help me. You will only suffer." Daniel sat beside her, silent for a long time. He thought about his life before capture. He thought about freedom, about the people he had lost. Finally, he said, "Maybe suffering is better than watching someone die inside." The girl turned her head slowly, confused by his words. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had chosen her life over their own. Hours passed. The night was endless. Daniel could not sleep. He could hear the girl's weak breathing, uneven, painful. He saw how thin she was, how her wrists carried fresh wounds from chains. He knew if nothing changed, she would not survive another week. In the morning, the guards dragged Daniel to the arena again. The crowd roared, ready for violence. This time, a huge alien beast was released, a creature with sharp claws, heavy muscles, and glowing red eyes. The announcer shouted, "Human against the beast! Let us see if his kindness helps him now." The crowd laughed, but Daniel did not. He tightened his fists. He had no weapons, only his speed and will. The beast roared and charged forward. The girl was forced to sit at the edge of the arena, chains on her ankles. She watched with wide eyes as Daniel dodged the first attack. The ground cracked under the beast's claws. The fight was brutal. Daniel was thrown to the ground more than once. His arms bled from scratches. But each time he fell, he stood again. The crowd screamed for blood, but Daniel's eyes kept moving back to the girl. He wasn't fighting only to live. He was fighting so she could live. At last, Daniel found his chance. He picked up a broken spear from the ground, left behind from an earlier match. As the beast charged again, Daniel rolled under its swing and drove the spear deep into its chest. The creature collapsed with a terrible cry. The arena shook with noise. Half the crowd cheered for blood, half booed because the human had survived again. Daniel stood over the fallen beast, chest rising and falling, blood running down his arm. He looked toward the girl. Her lips trembled. For the first time, her eyes showed something new. Hope. The guards dragged Daniel back toward the cells. The announcer shouted, "The human lives another day." But for how long? Inside the cell, the girl whispered, "Why do you keep standing up? Why do you not give up?" Daniel looked at her, tired but strong. "'Cause they want me to break." "And if I break, then you will believe you are broken too." Her eyes widened. No one had ever fought for her soul. That night, for the first time in years, she whispered a word not given by chains. "My name was Lyra," Daniel smiled softly. "Then Lyra it is, and as long as I am alive, they will never take it away again." The girl's heart, hidden under layers of pain, beat faster. Something dangerous had begun, dangerous to the guards, to the crowd, to the entire system, because one human had made a choice, not to destroy her, but to heal her. The arena was quiet now, but Daniel's cell was filled with heavy silence. His body ached from the fight. Deep scratches covered his arms, and his breathing was slow. Yet his mind was awake. He kept looking at the girl, at Lyra. She sat across from him, her knees pulled close to her chest, chains around her ankles shining in the dim light. For hours, she did not speak. Daniel thought she might fall asleep, but suddenly her voice broke the silence. "You should not have said my name." Daniel lifted his head. "Why not?" Lyra's eyes, glowing faintly under the torchlight, carried fear.
"If they hear it, they will erase it again."
"They will punish me for remembering." Daniel leaned closer, his voice low and calm. "Then I will remember it for you."
"No one can take that away from me." Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to argue.
But instead she lowered her gaze. Inside her heart, something she thought was dead stirred again. That night, sleep did not come to either of them. Daniel thought about escape, though he had no plan yet. Lyra thought about the strange human who risked his life for her. She wanted to believe in him, but belief was dangerous here. The next morning, the guards came earlier than usual. They dragged both Daniel and Lyra into a side chamber. It was smaller than the arena, but it still had a viewing window for the masters to watch. On a high chair sat one of the alien overseers. His body was tall, his face hidden behind a mask of silver. His voice was sharp like metal. "Human," the overseer said. "You refuse to play your role. You do not entertain. You heal instead of destroy." "Why?" Daniel kept his eyes steady. "Because she is alive."
"That is reason enough." The overseer laughed, a cold sound that echoed through the chamber.
"Then let us see how long that reason lasts." The guards chained Lyra to a wall. She struggled weakly, but she could not break free. The overseer waved his hand, and the floor opened. A cage rose up with a new beast inside, this one smaller but faster, with glowing blue fangs. The overseer's voice thundered. "You will fight again. But this time if you fail, she dies first." Daniel's blood turned cold. He clenched his fists, looking from the beast to Lyra. She shook her head, whispering, "Do not fight for me. They will break you too." But Daniel stepped forward. His eyes locked on the beast, his body tense like a bowstring. The overseer wanted him to fear, to hesitate, but Daniel would not. The fight began. The beast leapt with unnatural speed, claws aiming for Daniel's throat. He dodged, but the claws grazed his shoulder, spilling blood. The crowd behind the glass window laughed and cheered. Daniel pushed himself back up. He grabbed a loose chain from the ground and swung it with all his strength. The chain wrapped around the beast's neck. It roared and thrashed, pulling him across the floor, but Daniel held tight. The struggle was long. His hands burned, his muscles screamed, but finally he pulled the chain tighter until the beast collapsed, choking. Silence filled the chamber. The overseer tilted his head, curious. Daniel stood over the fallen creature, chest heaving, eyes blazing with defiance. Lyra stared at him, her heart racing. She had seen many humans die in these games, but never one who fought like this. Not for himself, but for her. The overseer spoke again. "Strange, you fight harder for her than for yourself."
"Perhaps this will make the show more interesting." He waved his hand.
The guards unlocked Lyra's chains and shoved her back toward Daniel.
"Keep her."
"But remember, every kindness has a cost." Back in the cell, Lyra could not stop shaking. She whispered, "They will kill you. They will kill us both."
"Why do you keep doing this?"
Daniel wiped the blood from his arm. His voice was tired but steady. "'Cause I made a choice."
"They call you broken."
"But I see more."
"I see someone worth saving." Tears welled in Lyra's eyes, something she thought she could never feel again.
She pressed her forehead against the wall, whispering, "If you keep this up, one day I might believe you." Daniel's heart grew heavy but also strong.
That whisper was enough.
For the first time, hope was no longer only his. It had begun to grow inside her too, soft, fragile, but alive. The days inside the alien prison blurred into one another. Fights, blood, and endless cheers from the crowd filled every moment. Yet, something had changed since Daniel learned Lyra's name. Every time he entered the arena, he no longer fought only for survival.
He fought so Lyra would see she was not broken.
And each time he returned, bruised, bleeding.
But alive, she looked at him differently. One night,
when the torches burned low, Lyra whispered, "You should not give me hope." Daniel tilted his head, tired but curious. "Why not?" "Because hope is the most dangerous thing here," she said. Her voice cracked heavy with fear. "When hope is crushed, it kills faster than chains." Daniel leaned closer. "Then let them try to crush it. We'll build it again." Lyra's eyes widened. No one had ever spoken so simply, so firmly. She felt something stir in her chest, a tiny spark. The next morning, something strange happened. The guards entered the cell, but instead of dragging Daniel, they pointed at Lyra. "The masters are curious," one guard hissed. "Tonight she will be tested." Lyra froze. Fear washed over her face. Daniel stepped forward, fists clenched. "She can't fight," he said. The guard slammed his staff against the floor.
"Silence, human."
"It is not your choice." They dragged Lyra away. Her terrified eyes met Daniel's until the heavy door closed between them. Hours passed. Daniel paced in his cell, anger boiling inside him. He wanted to break the bars, tear down the walls, anything to reach her. But all he could do was wait. Finally, the door opened again. 2 guards threw Lyra inside. She collapsed on the floor, gasping for air. Daniel rushed to her side. Her body was bruised, her wrists raw from new chains. But her eyes burned with something new. "They made me stand in the arena," she whispered, trembling. "Not to fight, but to watch. They brought another girl. Broken like me." The crowd screamed for her to die. I wanted to close my eyes, but I didn't. I looked at her, and then I thought, what if Daniel was watching me? Would he want me to fall? Or would he want me to stand? Daniel's chest tightened. He placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "And what did you do?" Her lips trembled. I stood. I stood tall even when they struck me. And for one moment I felt like I was not broken anymore. Daniel's eyes softened. "That's because you're not." The cell grew quiet again, but the silence was different this time. Not heavy, not empty. It carried something fragile, like a secret promise. That night, when Lyra finally slept, Daniel kept watch. He knew the overseers were changing the game. They wanted to twist Lyra, to turn her into another showpiece. But Daniel had made his choice. If she rose, he would rise with her. If she fell, he would fall too. The next day confirmed his fears. In the main arena, the overseer's voice boomed. "The human and the broken girl will now fight together. If they survive, they live. If not, their story ends here." The gates opened. From the shadows, 2 towering beasts emerged, creatures with armored hides and venom dripping from their jaws. The crowd screamed with delight. Daniel grabbed Lyra's hand. "Stay behind me. I'll hold them off." But Lyra shook her head. Her chains rattled as she stepped forward. "No, if I run, I stay broken. If I fight, maybe I heal." Daniel's heart pounded. She was terrified, her hands trembling, but her eyes burned with courage. The beasts roared and charged. Daniel tightened his fists. Lyra lifted a broken staff from the ground, her grip shaking but determined. Side by side, they faced death. Not as human and broken alien, but as 2 souls daring to defy the chains. The crowd roared. The overseer leaned forward with interest. Something new was happening, something dangerous. And in that moment, Daniel realized this was no longer about survival. This was about rebellion. The arena lights blazed brighter than ever, painting the sand in cruel colors. The crowd shouted louder than before, their voices mixing into a storm. They wanted blood, screams, and despair. Instead, what they were about to see was something different, something dangerous. Daniel stood tall, his fists tight, his eyes locked on the 2 monstrous beasts approaching. Beside him, Lyra trembled, but she did not step back. She clutched the broken staff like it was her lifeline, her breathing quick and sharp. The announcer's voice thundered, "Tonight, the human and the broken girl."
Together against the beasts of fire.
The gates closed behind them with a deafening clang. There was no escape. The ground shook as the first beast charged forward, flames flickering from its nostrils. The second circled, waiting for the kill. Daniel whispered quickly, "Listen to me."
Don't run. Stay close.
"Watch my steps," Lyra nodded, her eyes wide but determined. For the first time, she wasn't just waiting to be saved, she was ready to fight. The first beast lunged, claws slashing. Daniel grabbed Lyra's arm and pulled her aside just in time. The creature crashed into the wall, sending sand flying. The crowd cheered wildly. Daniel grabbed a loose chain from the ground, swinging it around his arm. "When I open its guard," he shouted, "strike."
Don't think, just strike.
Lyra's heart pounded. She had never fought before, but something inside her said she had to trust him. The beast roared again and charged. Daniel moved like lightning, rolling under its swing and wrapping the chain around its leg. The creature stumbled, crashing to its knees. "Now!" Daniel shouted, Lyra screamed, and swung the staff with all her strength. It cracked against the beast's eye. The monster howled, shaking its head violently. Blood spilled into the sand. The crowd gasped. The girl who was always broken
had struck back. The second beast didn't wait. It leapt toward them, jaws wide, fire dripping from its teeth. Daniel pushed Lyra aside, but this time she didn't hide. She spun, thrusting the staff forward. The point sank into the beast's mouth, forcing it to recoil with a furious roar. Daniel didn't waste the chance. He grabbed a jagged piece of broken spear from the ground and drove it deep into the creature's chest. The beast collapsed, twitching. The arena shook with screams of shock. Some cheered, some shouted in rage. The overseer leaned forward, his silver mask gleaming. He had not expected this. Lyra fell to her knees, gasping for breath. Her hands shook, blood dripping from her knuckles where the staff had splintered. Daniel knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he whispered. Her eyes filled with tears, not of pain, but of something she had not felt in years. Pride. For once, she was not broken. The announcer tried to shout over the chaos. The human and the girl, they live.
But the crowd was no longer united. Some shouted for them to be killed, angry at their defiance. Others cheered louder than ever, thrilled by the fight. For the first time, the crowd's voice split in half. The overseer raised his hand, and the arena grew silent. His voice cut through the air like a blade.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Perhaps we have underestimated this. Pair. Guards entered the arena, weapons ready. Daniel tensed, ready to fight again.
But instead of killing them, the guards dragged Daniel and Lyra back toward the cells. On the way, whispers spread among the crowd. The broken girl fought. The human protects her. Maybe they can win. Hope was spreading, and the overseers knew it. Inside the cell, Lyra sat down hard, still shaking. Daniel leaned against the wall, his arm bleeding heavily. She looked at him, her lips trembling. "You could have died for me." Daniel gave a tired smile. "Then at least you would have known you were never broken." For a moment, the silence between them was warm. Lyra touched her chest, feeling the beat of her heart. For the first time, she wanted to live, not just survive, but truly live. But outside, in the dark halls of the fortress, the overseers spoke in hushed tones. The crowd was changing. The games were shifting, and rebellion often began with only one spark. Daniel and Lyra had just lit it. The fortress buzzed with whispers after the fight. Slaves spoke in secret, guards argued in corners, and even the overseers could not ignore it. A human and a broken girl had fought together, and won. In the cell, Daniel wrapped a strip of cloth around his bleeding arm. Lyra sat across from him, her fingers still trembling, her mind replaying the battle again and again. Finally, she whispered, "I struck a beast."
I stood tall. Her voice shook, but there was pride in it. Daniel looked at her and smiled faintly. "And you'll do it again, because you're not broken, Lyra. You never were." Her heart jumped at the sound of her name.
Every time he said it, she felt more alive, like her stolen pieces were slowly returning. But outside the cell, the overseers had no smiles. The silver-masked leader sat in his high chamber, surrounded by shadows. "The crowd is divided," one of the advisors warned. "Some cheer for them, some demand their deaths. The spark is dangerous," the leader's voice was cold. "And we will crush it before it becomes fire." That evening, guards stormed the cell. They pulled Daniel to his feet and dragged him down the hall. Lyra cried out, "Where are you taking him?" One guard hissed, "To the pit." The pit was no ordinary arena. It was a nightmare carved into the ground, an endless circle of spikes, flames, and weapons designed only for pain. No one who entered came back alive. When Daniel saw it, his jaw tightened. The crowd above cheered louder than ever. They wanted the human crushed, his defiance erased. But before the fight began, something unexpected happened. The guards shoved Lyra into the pit as well. Chains bound her wrists, forcing her beside Daniel. The announcer's voice roared, "The human and the broken girl will now face the pit of judgment. If they survive, they may walk another day.
If not, their story ends here."
The gates opened. From the shadows, 3 figures stepped out, other slaves forced into battle. Their eyes were hollow, their bodies scarred. Each held a weapon. Lyra gasped.
"They're like me."
Daniel's stomach turned. He knew the overseers were playing a cruel game. They wanted him and Lyra to kill those already broken, to prove they were nothing more than beasts. One of the slaves stepped forward, whispering, "Forgive us. We have no choice." Daniel raised his hands.
"Then fight me, but don't touch her." The battle erupted.
Metal clashed, chains rattled, and the crowd screamed. Daniel fought with his bare fists, dodging blades and knocking enemies aside.
Lyra ducked behind him, but her eyes widened as one of the slaves turned toward her. Her heart pounded.
She remembered Daniel's words. "If I break, then you will believe you are broken too." Her hands closed around a broken spear on the ground. When the slave lunged, she blocked the strike, pushing back with all her strength. Sparks flew as metal scraped against stone. For the first time, Lyra shouted, not in fear, but in fury.
"I am not broken."
The crowd fell silent for a moment, shocked. Even the overseer leaned forward. Daniel heard her cry, and his strength doubled. He disarmed one opponent, spun, and struck another down. Blood covered the sand, but he did not stop. At last, only one slave remained, trembling, weapon slipping from his fingers. Daniel froze, panting.
He could kill him.
The crowd wanted it. The overseer demanded it, but instead, Daniel dropped the stolen blade. He turned his back and stood beside Lyra. "No more," he said firmly. The crowd roared with rage. The announcer shouted for blood, but something had shifted. Whispers moved through the stands. The human spares life. The broken girl stands. Maybe they are not toys. The overseer raised his hand, silencing everyone. His cold voice cut the air. "Very well. If you will not break them in the pit, then we shall break them in chains."
"Take them away." Back in the cell, Lyra collapsed, her body trembling.
But her eyes burned like fire. She looked at Daniel, tears sliding down her face. "You spared them."
"Even when you could have ended it." Daniel nodded slowly.
"Because if we kill only to survive, then we become the monsters they want us to be." For the first time, Lyra smiled. Weak, small, but real. Then I will fight, not just to live but to be free. Daniel met her gaze, his heart steady. The overseers thought they had chained them tighter, but in truth, they had made something far more dangerous. They had made Lyra believe, and belief was the beginning of rebellion. The fortress trembled with restless energy. Whispers spread faster than fire. The human defied the pit. The broken girl stood tall. They refused to kill. In the cells, Daniel sat with his back against the wall, his body covered in cuts and bruises. Lyra sat beside him, her chains still heavy, but her eyes no longer empty. For the first time, she carried the fire of belief. "Daniel," she whispered, "they will kill us for what we did." He looked at her calmly. "Then we die standing, not crawling." Her lips trembled. Once she would have begged to hide. Now she only nodded. That night, the overseers gathered in the high chamber. The silver-masked leader's voice thundered. The crowd wavers. Some cheer for them. Some whisper rebellion. This cannot continue. Tomorrow the human and the girl die for all to see. The decision spread quickly. "Guards sharpen weapons," slaves whispered in fear. But in the dark corners of the prison, others whispered something new. What if they win? The next day, the arena was more crowded than ever. Every seat filled, every voice shouting for an end. The announcer's voice echoed, "Behold, the human and the broken girl will face their final judgment. No more mercy, no more games. Today they fall." The gates opened. From the shadows, a monster unlike any before stepped forward. It was taller than the walls, armored like living steel, with eyes burning like fire. Chains rattled around its limbs, but it moved with deadly grace. Lyra's breath caught. "We cannot fight that." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then we don't fight alone." He looked at the crowd, raising his bloodied hands. His voice carried across the arena. "How long will you watch them break us? How long will you cheer for chains? We bleed, we suffer, and yet we live. If we fall today, remember this. Humans do not bow, and neither should you." The arena shook with shouts. Some booed, others cheered. Hope spread like wildfire through the crowd, even through the slaves forced to watch. The overseer's voice cut through the chaos. "Silence him." "Kill them both!" The beast roared and charged. Sand flew, the ground cracked. Daniel pushed Lyra behind him. "Stay close. Don't give in." The monster swung, claws slicing the air. Daniel rolled aside, grabbing a broken spear from the ground. He thrust, but the weapon snapped against its armor. The crowd screamed. Lyra's heart pounded. She saw Daniel fall, blood staining the sand. Fear surged inside her, but so did fire. She grabbed the shattered spear and shouted, her voice echoing through the arena. "I am not broken!" The cry cut the air like thunder. The crowd gasped. Even the monster paused, its burning eyes fixed on her. Lyra ran forward, striking at the beast's exposed joint. Sparks flew as the spear dug deep. The monster roared in pain. Daniel forced himself up, seizing a heavy chain from the ground. He leapt, wrapping it around the creature's neck, pulling with all his strength. "Now, Lyra." She screamed and drove the spear into the wound again. The beast collapsed, shaking the entire arena. Silence fell. Thousands of eyes watched, stunned. The broken girl and the human stood together, bloodied but unbroken. The overseer rose to his feet, furious. "Kill them now. Guards, end this." But something unexpected happened. The guards hesitated. Some looked at the crowd, where slaves and even free aliens were standing, shouting, "Not broken!" Not broken. The fortress shook with rebellion. The overseers had tried to crush a spark, but they had created a fire. Daniel took Lyra's hand, raising it high. His voice carried one last time. "They called her broken. They called us weak. But today we show them we are stronger than chains." The arena erupted. Chains clattered as slaves broke free. Guards dropped weapons, and the crowd roared with defiance. The silver-masked leader vanished into the shadows. his control slipping. In the chaos, Daniel and Lyra stood side by side. Their bodies were scarred, their future uncertain. But in that moment, they were not slaves, not toys, not broken, they were free. And their story, one human, one alien girl, and the fire they lit together, was only the beginning.